We look for happiness in people or in situations or in validations or things that we want to achieve. But looking for happiness, as cheesy as it sounds, in outside things, it doesn't work. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope that everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in. So lately I've been thinking about happiness, and so today I wanted to give you a 3-step guide on how to be happy. I'm kidding. Obviously I'm kidding. If there were such a guide, I'm sure that we would all know about it by now, but we don't have it. And so yeah, complicated questions. What is happiness? How do we find happiness? I don't feel I have all the answers to that. I wish I did. But I do know that my happiness levels have increased a lot over the last years. And so I was thinking about that, like, how come I feel so much happier? What am I doing differently? What am I focusing on more? What have I cut out of my life that I feel happier? And from that thought, I sat down and I wrote a list with everything that came to my mind when it comes to this. And today I wanted to share a few of the things that I wrote down that day. This is not a complete list. These things are not in any particular order, just some thoughts on happiness and how I was able to find more of it. Let's start with understanding that my feelings don't always matter. Let me explain. So I think as humans, we are often very much run by our emotions. Some people less, some people more, but often that is the case. I mean, how often have you told yourself, I'm not going to do this right now because I don't feel like it. I'm going to not do this because it feels uncomfortable. I'm going to do it tomorrow because that's when I'm going to feel like doing it more. Like, we base a lot of our choices and how we show up on how we feel. But that's not always a good thing, because often our feelings will keep us in our comfort zone. Most of the things that make me happiest in my life and that feel the most rewarding, they all happened because I did not always listen to how I felt. Rather, they happened through discipline, consistency, discernment, and getting out of my comfort zone. But if I would have always listened to how I felt, I think I would be very, very miserable today. So for example, the relationships in my life that make me the happiest, they all happened because I stuck it through with the people, and I didn't just leave or move on to the next most exciting person whenever I felt bored or maybe overwhelmed, meaning I did not always listen to how I felt. Or the projects that make me feel the proudest and that have been the most rewarding in my life in terms of what I've created, it all came from a lot of patience and a lot of consistency. And there were a lot of days where I woke up and I didn't necessarily feel like doing it, but I pushed through that. And so through that, I was able to create something that I was proud of. The only reason I was able to work on my emotional well-being getting better was because I sat in the discomfort of what I was feeling. I decided to see it for what it was, and I decided to get better every single day. But my feelings, they wanted to distract me. They wanted to just simply feel better. But me going against my feelings and sitting in the discomfort of what it was, that's how I was able to move out of it. So there are a lot of things where I can think of in my life where I think if I would have listened to how I felt all the time, I don't even know where I would be today. And yeah, there are moments where our feelings are filled with passion and excitement and motivation and inspiration, and we just go for it and we create amazing things. But I don't think we can wait for our feelings to feel that way to go and do the things we need to do, because sometimes inspiration and motivation is there, sometimes it's not, and we can't wait for that. I think to really create happiness, we need a little bit of a voice that comes in and brings more of a rational side to it, and it comes in with, some discipline and especially some discernment, a voice that says, you're feeling this right now, we're going to acknowledge it, but we're not going to be run by that. So the next thing I wanted to share is female friendships and connections. For me personally, as a woman, I feel there is a big part of our lives that is supposed to be taken up by dating and relationships. Like the amount of times I get asked about my dating life by strangers and people I meet and friends and family, it's very weird, and I see it happen with my friends all the time. And I think it actually starts happening at a very, very young age, that society places that as a very important part, and there's a lot of focus on that. And I think it's really unhealthy, because when you start hearing something so often, the mind actually starts to think, okay, well, this is supposed to be a really important part of my life, and it's almost supposed to be like the base of my existence. And yeah, relationships are a really big part, but there's also so much more than that. Truly, the strong connections with the women in my life have carried me through some of the darkest moments of my life. They have been the biggest cheerleaders through the good times, whether that was in terms of women who I looked up to or who were supporting me, or just friends and just women who I connected with. And yeah, there is just this feeling of sisterhood, and there is a lot of support in that for me. And it's a space where there is a lot of healthy exchange and trust and support and growth and understanding and reflection, but in a healthy two-way exchange. And you kind of know that you are on similar paths, but you just support one another. Yeah, I think as women in society, we are also often taught to compete against one another, but that is just detrimental, because it means that we emotionally isolate from each other, and that's just really unhealthy and really toxic, how much comparison and competition can be going on between females. And so I think we need to be doing exactly the opposite. And so for me, there was a lot of happiness that came from not only focusing on dating or relationships or success or productivity, which is what we are always taught, but also taking some of that and focusing it more on female connections and sisterhood in a way. There was a lot of support and growth and happiness that came from that for me. I think I also just kind of grew up with that, because whenever I was in Pakistan, I remember it was just so normal to have so many females around you and to have this whole support system of women outside of just your relationship or who you were dating or who you were married to. And it was just so normal to have my cousins with me all the time, and we would sleep over all the time. And my aunts, not my aunts, my aunts, my grandma, like it was just so normal to talk and to share and to just be there for one another. And then in other parts of the world, sometimes I found it harder to access that, and I was like, why is this not a thing here? Like, this makes so much sense to me. I don't know, I just feel like female connections have carried me through my entire life. I've just not always seen the importance of it. Next point is spirituality or faith. So I don't think I've ever talked about spiritual or religious beliefs on here. Not that I remember, but truly for me, my spirituality, or I don't know if faith is the right word. I find it very hard to put words on this, but let's say my spirituality and my faith are definitely one of the most important things in my life. And I think becoming more grounded in that has definitely been a huge factor in why I generally feel happier, and I also have more trust in life. What do I mean by that? For me, it's just, I really truly do believe that everything is energy, and I believe that there is a higher power, and I believe that there is more to life than just this physical matter. And for me, there is a lot of fulfillment that comes from coming closer to the version of myself that is the most connected to that, and at the same time working more on the version of myself that is disconnected from that. It's very hard for me to put words on this, but that's probably how I would word it if I would have to word it. And I just try my best that my spiritual beliefs are at the core of everything I do. So the words I speak, the actions I take, what I try to achieve in my life, how I show up with the people in my life, I try my best that my spiritual beliefs, like I want them to be at the core of everything I do. And whenever that is not the case, which happens very often, it is just a journey to come closer to that again. And yeah, I can also I love learning about this. I can spend hours and hours just reading and listening to things about these topics. It's very fascinating to me, and I think there's a lot of fulfillment that comes from my faith for me. So for me, I was really only able to find more happiness in my life once I stopped saying, I'm going to be happy once XYZ happens, because that point never comes. And of course, there are a few fundamental human needs that we have that cannot be compromised on, such as a roof over our head, or safety, or shelter, or food, and all of those things. But once that has been established, I think to walk through life with this mindset of I'm going to be happy once XYZ happens, I really think then that point never comes. We look for happiness in people or in situations or in validations or things that we want to achieve, but looking for happiness, as cheesy as it sounds, in outside things, it doesn't work. And so does finding happiness within mean we can never want things to be different and we can never want to achieve things because we should always be happy with what is right now? No, of course not, because desire is normal, and it's normal and healthy to have things that we want to create in our lives to improve our lives and our well-being. That's so, so important. But those things might improve our happiness, but to go and look for happiness in external things is just never going to work, because that point never comes. The mind always will find the next thing where we think, once I reach that, I'm going to be happy. And then you reach that point and you come up with the next thing where you think, once I reach that, I'm going to be happy, because the human brain is wired in a way that we always want more. We always want to create more. And so we cannot look for happiness in those outside creations. Someone once said to me, do you know these moments when you're going through your house and you're looking for your keys until you realize they were in your pocket the entire time? It's the same for happiness. We go around and we look for it in people and in validation and in success and things we want to achieve, and then we realize it was in our pocket, inside ourselves, all this time. And that sounds like the cringiest Instagram quote ever. I feel cringy saying that out loud. But at the same time, it's so fucking true. Also, I made a podcast episode a while back about finding happiness within and not having it only be based on external things in life. And so if you would like to listen to that, I will link it everywhere. I will link it everywhere where I can link it now. Yeah, that's it for today. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a beautiful morning, evening, night, wherever you are. And I am looking forward to connecting with you in my next episode.